are now. Like,
It already is.
look at my beautiful. Did
So-
you ever get your black licorice?
Jess has a whole
don't think-
side table of snacks now. She has her drinks.
You love black licorice.
All I see is blessings on blessings, yeah. I see the blessings coming our way, our way, our way. Blessings on blessings.
So today we're joined by Jessica Alba, who is one of my really good friends, and I'm really excited for her to be on the show. She is a mom. She's a founder and chief creative officer of The Honest Company. She is a globally recognized business leader, entrepreneur, advocate, and actor, and New York Times bestselling author. So basically, she's all the things. Welcome, Jessica Alba.
You love black licorice.
So I'm just going to tell you guys a little bit while Jess is still setting herself up to be comfortable for these next 30 minutes of our conversation of how we met. So I think that's the one question whenever Jess and I do anything. And, you know, if anyone who follows me and anyone who knows us together knows that we do quite a bit together, and we have some really actually fun stuff coming up that we're super excited about.
What do we have coming up, Lizzy? Is this going to come out before our thing?
I don't know. So it's actually out now. Just go over to Roku
Out now.
because it's out right now. You can go watch it. Basically, we have a design show coming out, and we are focused on parents and their spaces. And interesting enough, it's a show that we're super excited
For
about, and we
families.
get to make over the spaces of families who are experiencing a huge transition. This is not ASMR. Stop crunching your almonds in our thing. Okay, so how we know each other, though. So I think it's very interesting that Jess and I met as mom friends.
Yeah, we met in preschool.
We met in preschool. And I think what's interesting about that is because you do meet a lot of parents when your kids first go to school.
True story.
It's interesting because I don't think either Jess or I are very mom friend people. I think that's the interesting part about it is that
I feel like
we
you need a footstool.
Oh my god.
Oh.
She's getting a footstool right now, guys. If
'Cause
you
it's, like, not
if you're
interesting.
listening, then she's getting a footstool, so she's now fully stretched out from her legs on.
My skinny jeans were cutting off my circulation at my
She
knees.
has snacks off to the side of her with drinks.
Mm-hmm.
And her Honest lip gloss, and now she's fully comfortable.
Yeah.
Are you comfortable?
Yeah, I'm massaging my knees.
Are you ready?
My kneecaps are
I
getting
feel like that's like irritating though. That
is
sound is
great.
irritating.
Okay. We met in preschool.
Met in our kids' preschool.
And we don't really make friends in
So you
those types
agree.
of environments.
This is true, which I think was kind of like interesting that we
Which
connected.
is probably why we liked each other.
It's probably why, even though I didn't know her, she didn't know me. I mean, I
think
knew
I only
of
have
her.
one other friend that
You met in preschool.
I met, at a kid's school
that you're still friends with.
I'm still friends with. Mm-hmm.
Isn't that crazy though? Mm-hmm. I thought it was kind of crazy.
So
too.
Honor's friend, Winter,
Oh yeah.
and then Haven's friend, Nima.
That's so wild. So you met in school too with Honor's friend? Oh, that's great. Jess and I also have a studio that we basically do a lot of content out of, and a production company that we share, which has made us a lot closer as well. I feel like now
We spent a lot of time together.
Now we know each other on so many multitudes
We've
of
been
levels.
to the World. Is it called the World Crystal Expo in Tucson,
Oh my
Arizona?
God. That was a trip, boy. Let me tell you. Jess basically convinced me to go with her
Yeah, it was a good
to
idea.
the gym show
Because it was
in Tucson,
it was
Arizona.
a time in your life that you needed to get away and not go right into being all the things.
Which is
so
interesting.
I wanted you to not have to do that, and this
Yeah.
was a very light way to pull you away from those responsibilities.
I totally agree. And to be honest with you, it was a really hard time in my life, which I'm still actually going through. My mom passed away, and we had to take her back to my hometown of Michigan to do the funeral and the memorial. And It was very, very obviously stressful. It was emotional. It was so many things that I think I have the words for now. I can't even tell you. But yeah, Jess convinced me to go to this gym therapy show. And also, I feel like you've also been really instrumental in
It
helping
wasn't
me
therapy, but we
heal.
did have therapy.
Yeah.
It was a gym show.
It was a gym show, but it kind of felt like
It was
therapy.
because
It felt like
I just
therapy.
wanted you to be able to be in a hotel room and you can just be there if you wanted to, or you could just walk around and we can look at crystals.
It was fascinating, though. I mean, to be
was.
honest with you, I've never been into crystals necessarily in my life, and I really didn't know much about them. But
Neither did I.
we found so many.
So
And
many.
there's so many,
Pretty. They're so pretty.
intentions, and they're so beautiful, and they have so many meanings.
Mm-hmm.
And, just to imagine that this crystal came out of dirt.
Oh my God.
It was
That's
wild.
the thing. You're like, how can something so beautiful come out of something that you would just, it's so nondescript?
All right, so obviously I met you as a mom, right? So I didn't really know you prior to being a mom. How I known you has
Well, I
been
didn't really have
you
that
with a
many friends
family and
before.
kids. Oh, really?
I became a mom, no, because I worked all the time. And so I think I had 2 weeks off about from age like 18 on. I had 2 weeks off a year. I like wouldn't take any holidays off. I never like really, nothing was really as important as work until I had Honor.
And so how did that change you, though, as a person?
It was weird because I actually never lived in one place for that long. I had a very like nomadic life, and so it was the first time I stayed in one place for like a full year. It was weird.
Your lifestyle prior to having a family, I feel like it was kind of similar to me too, right? Like I remember I used to be on the road so much. I used to travel like 3 times a week modeling, and before I had kids. And when I had Nima, who's my oldest, I feel like I kind of dove into this space because that's what you did. I mean, I also miscarried before Nima. So I also was very much like, I don't know, I transformed into this like, it's all about motherhood for me. Like Nima's the only one that mattered. Like everything else in the world could like eat one. I didn't care. Like I just was about this kid.
Yeah, the priorities shift.
The priorities
for sure.
shifted, but I feel like I lost a lot of who I was. I'm not gonna lie. I as much as I love being a mom, I feel like I just lost a lot of what made me happy about just being a woman and just being me. And so do you feel like although, Honor might have settled you, right? Because you were used to traveling and kind of being out and about so much. Do you feel like you lost a little bit of yourself or no?
No, it's weird. I actually feel like I found myself as a mom. I felt more ownership over myself. I felt more connected in a way. I think I was always searching for a home prior to. That's why it was no big deal to not commit too much to anything because nothing ever really felt right. And I think when I had Honor, things started to come together in a way that felt right, like a home, like the thing that I think I was always looking for. I think when it comes to the connection, though, like to the hormone thing and feeling connected to your body, because it is like a hostile takeover. It's like an alien is like,
It's so much like a hostile takeover.
Yeah.
That's what it is. You're right. You don't. Don't get me wrong. I had great pregnancies, so I'm
You
not
did
the
have great
one. I had
pregnancies.
great pregnancies,
And I would say I had very, very, I was also very fortunate, but even so, my body was defying me on a daily basis.
yeah.
I think when you're so used to being in control, there was something about like being so out of control and just sort of like releasing to what is just supposed to happen. So that was something that I really, I embraced and I liked. And also I slept. It was like the first time I ever slept in my life.
You slept during pregnancy?
Because you actually have, there's a hormone, a relaxing hormone that your body releases naturally. And I and I was really calm, and I slept for the first time. I mean, not at the end, you know, you pee all the time, but I just felt really
at peace,
tired and at peace. And
I think there's a certain connection, right, that you
but
get.
Hormonally, it was weird.
Yeah, that you get during pregnancy for sure. But
afterwards was hard.
After it
took me like a good year to feel.
It took me 2.
All right again.
It took me 2 years easily. With the first one, it took me 2 years.
It took me a good
by far.
year. It was hard.
I don't know. I think the connection we have with our kids and how it just changes our perspective on things. Like for you, you said, you know, it finally you brought peace. You found a home. You know, did you feel like it made you more focused? Because Honor was your inspiration for Honest.
I don't know if it made me more focused, but it certainly allowed me to apply my drive into something that felt more meaningful.
A way to give back.
Yeah, it's like I thought about my time. You know, when you have a child, it was the first time I really felt mortality. Like I felt like life and death it's like this close. And it just feels, that experience just feels so raw and real and fragile. And so I think maybe I took my life for granted before a little bit. And maybe I really felt how fragile life is. And it's like, we're not going to be here forever. What do I want to do with it? And when I had the idea that I could do something that can make the world better, there really was nothing that could compare to that to sort of steer me off that course. It took me 3.5 years to figure it out, but you know, I'm relentless.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are, in so many things. New life is what kind of showed you the snap of a finger between life and death, right? And mortality. For me, it was death.
Really?
For me, it wasn't until my mom passed that I realized, like, wow, there is this really, really fine line between life and death. So it's interesting that, like, giving birth and bringing life into the world for you was that moment. And for me, literally not until like a couple months ago did I kind of even begin to realize how literally thin that line was. And how it can really shift your perspective on life. I feel like my perspective on life has now shifted totally than where I was prior.
Yeah. Everyone has their own like movie playing in their head, and their truth is their truth, right? It's interesting. They say in like kind of the first thing you learn in couples therapy or any therapy that you do with anyone is just you learn pretty quickly that you can go through the exact same experience, but the story is so different for each individual depending on which character you are in the play, you know?
I think the biggest thing with me and Issa's my husband, we've been married for 13 years. I think the biggest thing for us of recent is just that, like, we have conversations or experiences or disagreements, and we are saying totally different things. We both have good intentions. Same words.
Opposite meaning.
Opposite meanings.
Yeah, it's wild.
But like, okay, so talk to me, because this is interesting. I feel like you and Cash.
Wait, you just figured this one out?
I don't even think I figured it out. That's the problem. I haven't figured this out, which is
it's real.
Why I feel like we are such at a place in our lives where we're 3 kids down.
You almost feel like you're aliens or something.
Yeah,
You're
we
like,
have our careers. And it's
on
like,
the same
for me,
planet?
I
feel like I'm in a different galaxy.
1,000%. 1,000%. And it's like, listen, I know that like the struggle is real. I get it. You know, we live in LA. We're not from LA.
But what's the struggle?
For me, the struggle is, how do you grow in a relationship together, but also independently, where you're still growing as an individual? That's the struggle for me. That's where I'm trying to find. So you and Cash have been together for how many years?
Honor's 14, 18.
Yeah, 18 years you and Cash have been together. And you guys are one of these examples, right? Where you are making it work in a industry and in a place where they don't highlight it or promote it, right?
They don't really do that in society.
In society, period.
Period.
1,000%. Especially
like 50%
not.
of marriages end in divorce. But I also think that, like, I don't think you have to care about what society wants to say about who you should be. And I think everybody should just live their truth.
How do you do that in marriage? How do you do that with each other? Forget about society.
Yeah.
Forget about the outside world.
Right. I think you don't need to. I think if you have the ability to throw away any preconceived ideas about what it is, and you're just living in the truth of the moment, you don't feel like you're limiting yourself or making yourself small or dimming your light to fit inside of someone else's box.
For me, I think I'm trying to find a balance between, there's so much history there, right? Like, you're talking 13 years, 18 years for you guys. There's so much history. You've grown up together in so many ways. You've become parents together. You started businesses together. You have,
Separate
had
businesses,
experiences,
not the same
several
business.
businesses. Yeah, well, you know what I mean. Yes, several businesses. But then that's in itself too.
Separate businesses, not the same business.
Correct.
We would kill each other.
No,
if we
separate
were
businesses.
in the
Okay,
same
so how
business.
is that, right? Like how? But even let's speak on that. You and Cash both have successful separate businesses. You guys have 3 children who are different ages: 14,
Yeah, they are so
11,
different.
4. Like these are different age groups and categories. And plus, you guys are, still very happily married. How does that happen? I don't know. What is it?
I used to say how we got through it was, communicating, like over communicating or communicating. Because, like, when you let things fester, that's always like, I think that was one of the first lessons I learned, is to speak my mind. I was afraid to do it before. There's just facts, and you can, like, find your way back to each other or not, and you can decide that you want to do it or not. And the sign is the person showing up for you or not. Stay optimistic and try to come at everything with the best of intentions. I think if you carry all of your baggage or all of your past experiences where everything, it's almost like easy to kind of tally up all the wrongs, right? And you can have like a long laundry list of when this happened or when that happened. I don't know if you can let that go, and if you can just live in this space of, like, love and compassion and vulnerability, I think you could always figure out a way to show up.
I think you said something in the very beginning. You said decide. Like, you have to decide. And
yeah.
I think that, for each person, right? Like, I think each person in the relationship, you got to decide. Do you want it? Do you not? Do you want, like, you have to decide. And then coming in, I love the whole coming in with, like, positive intention. Come in with positive intention. Now, that's not always easy to do, I will say. When you are so irritated, when you are at your peak, for me and Issa, he can push a button that no one else on earth can push.
Until he can't anymore.
Until he can't. And that's you're saying don't give that power.
And then it doesn't matter. Then you're just like, and then when that doesn't work, then what? Because you kind of stay in sort of like a certain vibration when you allow those patterns to sort of permeate and keep you there. And then you become stagnant, right? But if you sort of break away from those normal patterns, where I do this and you do that, and every time I do this, you're going to do that, and you just keep doing that, there's no growth. But if you can figure out how to, like, evolve from that, where those things don't matter as much, then you're growing and changing, and then they're going to look for different tactics to try and get your attention, because that's probably all he's trying to do.
You are like, I've known you for, let's say, 8 years, 7, 8 years. We've been on this journey of friendship. And
Has it been 8 years?
yeah, I think so. Right now, I really feel like it's so interesting. I've seen you grow in so many different ways. And you've helped me grow in many different ways as well. But right now, in this moment, I see such like this journey you're on. And I think it's so amazing. I think it's so magical. I just think it's phenomenal to see. And I think the beauty in it is that you really are trying on this journey to bring in also the people you love the most, because you want to see them grow so much too. You're like, look, I can't be here by myself. Y'all gonna have to grow too or get left behind. So tell me about this spiritual journey you're on right now. And is the space you're in now because personal growth is so important to you? It's so important to show up that way, or
It always has been. I think that I've always been on a journey. I think that it manifests in different ways. The personal growth when I was 11, 12 was different than the personal growth at 17 or 25. Or I've always been really passionate about spiritually evolving since I could remember, like 4. And I've always questioned the world around me and questioned my place in the world. I think maybe because I never felt like I was comfortable or something, and I was looking for something that felt like my home, even though I was born into a family, obviously. It just, I don't know, there's something that didn't sit well or didn't feel right. I felt like a stranger.
what feels different about this part of the journey?
I think a friend of mine got sick, and she has small kids. And I think just thinking about leaving my kids, like what would I want to leave them with?
So do you feel like...
Knowing they're like your legacy.
Right.
Like what else are we going to leave this world with?
Do you feel like it's bringing something to you that you wish you had had earlier? Or do you feel like the timing right now is the timing where it's supposed to be?
You know, I used to pray a lot for joy because I didn't experience a lot of joy when I was younger. And I was always so envious of kids that had that like unbridled joy. And I think that I'm hoping that it will get me to a place where I can experience more joy.
You used to pray for joy. Do you feel like this journey is helping you become or bring that joy more to your kids' lives? Or like helping you, you know what I mean? Like
Probably making
for
space
them
for
have
it.
that. Yeah, making space for them to actually, have that in their childhood that you didn't have as much.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely see how a lot of my choices are to set them up to be compassionate, happy, empathetic people. I think I was misunderstood most of my life because I'm pretty straightforward and I can be quite non-flowery with my word choices.
Cut out the sugar.
Yeah.
But I disagree with that. I actually disagree with that. As your friend, I've seen you, as your friend and business, partner in certain areas of your business. I feel like I've seen you in much different spaces. I feel like
I think I've evolved.
you have, like even from jump, I feel like you have evolved. But I feel like you know how to code it when you have to. I feel like you know your audience.
I need to get a little bit better at. That's what I'm also learning how to coax or coat because my intentions are usually right. It's just the way that the deliveries can be a little bit intense. But I'm passionate, and so it's hard to like squash the passion. But it's also kind of the thing that's like my thing, right? I'm eccentric. I'm not like a typical person.
Do you feel like the way you were raised has impacted how you are choosing to raise your kids?
100%.
And expand, like tell me like how.
How was the way you were raised affect the way that you want to raise your kids?
I was raised, it's interesting you say, I was raised in a single family. My mom was a single mother, I should say. I meant a single parent household. So I was raised with a single mother. I was raised with 2 older brothers. My grandmother was a very instrumental part in my childhood. She was basically, whenever me and my brothers talk about our parents, we'd be like, yeah, we have 2 parents, my mom and my grandma. Those are our 2 parents. And we were very close with both of them. And that's how we were raised. So my grandma was there every day and, all that. But how does it impact in terms of like how I'm choosing to raise my kids? I think that there is this, we were obviously raised with a very old school mentality on things, like we were raised, I don't know. I can't even think of one example where I feel like it really stands out, but I do feel like I have a more modern take on how I'm choosing to raise my kids. I still believe in structure. I still believe in rules. But, like, I also know, like, my mom was, like, big on Pop-Tarts in the morning. Like, yo, eat these Pop-Tarts and, and at the time I loved it. And now, even as an adult, I realized that she did it because, 1, they're inexpensive and she was a single mom raising 3 kids. And 2, they're quick. And she didn't have a lot of time in the mornings. She was trying to get us out and get all 3 of us dressed and out of the house.
And also what? It made you guys happy.
And it made us happy. It probably did make us happy.
Where it could be hard to get you guys 3 kids up and out the door.
Yeah, it was a bribe.
It probably made you guys happy.
It was a bribe. That's one thing I will say. I do take that from her. I will bribe them every once in a while. But, how has your upbringing, has it shifted how you, raised your kids? I mean, for us, we weren't raised in the church. My mom had always this philosophy on going to churches. She never really felt like it was like she wasn't really into the church of like going every Sunday and that kind of thing, but she raised us with a very close relationship to God. So we believed in God, we knew how to pray, all that, but we weren't necessarily like church kids. Whereas,
do you think church would have been hard for her as a single mom? Do you think she would have felt judged?
I think my mom had uncomfortable experiences with the church when she was either growing up or when her father died, and didn't feel like they were as opening and loving and welcoming as she had hoped. And so for that reason, when she raised us, she felt like it wasn't a place where she really needed us to be.
Or she didn't want you guys to be disappointed.
Correct. So what about you in terms of how you bring any of those kind of experiences from your childhood into the way you're raising your kids now?
I mean...
Or choosing not to.
Yeah. I mean, I think I learned a lot about the type of environment I wanted to raise them in to thrive. And I think a lot of the parenting I got was, this is just what you do, and it's really about fitting inside of a mold or what's expected of you, and almost nobody wanted to stand out. It was like, how can you assimilate and blend in as much as possible? So it was like, don't ask questions, keep your head down, and be grateful that you're here, kind of thing. And so that sort of like permeated into everything. And I just wasn't into it. I didn't care about social structures and hierarchies that weren't representative of me. And I identified as Mexican. Mexican American, I guess, with people who are actually from Mexico will be like, yay, Mexican. But in this country, I identified as Mexican, and like there just weren't a lot of us in leadership roles in anywhere, right? In school, in government, in business, and entertainment, and hospitals. Yeah, none of it. So I just sort of, I don't know, I was just like, why? I felt like I deserved to be there just as much as anyone else. And I knew there were other people that weren't white dudes that also deserved to be treated with dignity and fairness, and they just weren't there. And so I just questioned the world around me from day one. And my family really felt like it was problematic to question things. And they were like, just kind of go with the flow. And I think a lot of that comes from like assimilation, you know. They grew up in a very racist California, my grandparents, and then even my dad, until he was like 5, it was still segregated. And so they probably are, you know, wearing the trauma of their history. And I don't know, I wasn't raised with that same ideas or notions that I had to fight against. So for me, I just came in and I was just like, well, where are we? Why? Women are 50% of the population. Where are we? You know, I see a lot of different ethnicities all around me. Why aren't they outside of my sort of like playground? Or you know, my dad was in the military, and so there's a lot of mixed families, a lot of families from a lot of different places, and we all were on equal footing. And then when we got out of the military, it was like, what's going on here? You know, I went to like a super white suburb in California, and my grandparents just like kept their head down.
Your family now is basically United Nations. And I don't know if people really realize what you've kind of created even within your own home. You know, you have such a mixed family now, you know, coming from, like you said, a background in a space where you feel like that it really wasn't celebrated. Like, you weren't in a space where people celebrated.
No, they didn't celebrate being any person of color. And it was all really around trying to fit into white civil society. What I loved about working when I was young, and I begged my parents to let me try to get a job, to work. I knew I would be able to travel and see things, and I think I was trying to find my tribe, or like what felt more like home. Because
So how do you do it with your kids? How do you celebrate it with your kids? How do you celebrate all of the beautiful diversity they have even within
I talked to
themselves?
them about it. I talked to them about, you know, I definitely had to find my way into a connection with my lineage, my history, and I love the beauty of indigenous people in Mexico. My grandfather is like probably 100%, because my dad's 50 and I'm, you know, like 23%. And so I just like have always been curious and drawn to it, but then now I'm like, oh, maybe it's because there's something deeper in there, right? And then
You're also a history buff, though. You also are
I just like to learn,
love
you know.
history.
And then also, yeah, the conquistadors came, and everybody speaks Spanish now, and so they want to call us and identify us as Hispanic. But it's like, right, the language of the people that basically tore our communities apart. And great, all right. And that's fine. That's the unifying identity, I guess. But there's something about the truth of like who we originally were and the choices that a lot of our ancestors weren't afforded, and were put in a lot of terrible and compromising situations, and they survived through us, right? Through their kids and grandkids and great-grandkids. And I put in my foyer photos of our family on Kash's side, on my side. And my mom's white, and her father's from Denmark, and her mother has a really, really long history in the United States on her mother's side. And, you know, she has a totally different experience in America, right, than my dad. And just also appreciating her experience and what that must have been like. And, you know, she grew up without a dad, a girl in the 60s and 70s, and was raised by 3 older women. That was also pretty unconventional and different.
Mm-hmm.
Moving around a lot, and everybody has their truth. And so I tried to just sort of like give context and understanding to my kids so they can have compassion and empathy and not just see a book by its cover.
I mean, it's pretty powerful.
And
I mean, that wall.
The wall is cool, and
The
they get
wall
to
is
see
cool.
as much as we could capture
Mm-hmm.
everything that got all the people and our ancestors that were part of who they are in the story.
You've really made it quite a focal piece in your home.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in like the main hallway of
It
your
is,
home. And
right
I
when you
think
walk
that
in.
I love the fact that your kids and whoever really even comes into the house can ask questions. Even Hayes is 4 now. So,
Yeah.
I'm sure he
does
asks
ask
so many
questions.
questions.
He does.
But I think it's been there even ever since I've known you in every
That
place
was the
you've
first
lived.
thing
Yeah.
that I did. I would say that as a mom, my mom thing, as I wanted my kid to have that context and understanding. My family, they were really big on like celebrations, but like everything was a celebration. So like I felt like every weekend it was somebody's birthday or a graduation or some milestone that we were celebrating, or it was basically any reason to like get together, have a barbecue, have a potluck. It was always a potluck of some sort, and
That's what it's about.
guitars and singing and
Yes.
playing games and having fun.
But that's what it's about. I mean,
Yeah.
if you really think about it, that is what it's about. And girl, I don't know what you're talking about though. You still celebrate everything. You guys are still the family that like, you make it a point to make sure that, your kids feel celebrated. That different things that happen, you guys bring in family and friends and your closest people to feel celebrated. Like that is still a part of like
So
what you do.
That I would say I definitely got
Yeah.
from my family.
Yeah.
But I think on the flip side, I really leaned more into who we are and where we come from, and gave a lot more of that context to my kids
Yeah.
than maybe I was raised with.
Yeah.
So
I know, just to go back to the wall, the one thing I do love though is that when people come in, they feel pride too in telling, about their ancestors, or say who is on the wall. Or I always point to pictures like, who's that? And Haven will tell me the whole story
that's
behind who
nice.
is. So that's one
That's
thing I
sweet.
actually think is actually to it. It gives you not only, it gives them a context, right? But it's also a pride. It's like, oh, let me tell you who it is.
That's
It's
cute.
like their chest like puffs up, and they get, and the voice changes, and so that it brings like a pride in where they come from, which I think is really, really dope. You know what I mean? I think it's cool. It's something that I wish I had more pictures of my family. I wish I knew my father's side. I wish I could share that whole other side of myself, right? Of where I even come from. But to not even have that, sometimes it feels like that little part is missing. So I love the fact that you guys celebrate, you and Cash's, both sides of your family, and your kids feel that, and they feel that love. And, I think that's really cool. I guess the thing I really want to just kind of like ask just before we sign off here is, one thing I'm really happy about is that you've had kids before me. So like, although we have kids that are the same ages, you also have an older child before me. Honor is 14. She is officially a teenager. She's officially a high schooler now.
I know, it's
And the
so
fact
awful.
that you have a high school, a middle school, and soon to be kindergarten, elementary school, you are really kind of like crossing. You're in three very separate.
Yes, they're all in different stages.
So how do you do that? How do you mom different stages?
I don't know. You figure it out. There's no like, I don't know. I just approach it like they're human beings, and like I
That's
try
good.
to meet them where they're at, and I try to not put too much of my. That's hard for me, because I just want to like speed them up to
Understanding
all
it.
the mistakes that I made and learned
Yeah.
from, and they have to go through some of those experiences themselves in order to learn the lesson in their way. And so I struggle with that, but They're all at such different, it's exhausting. They're all at such different places.
Mine is exhausting, and all of mine are 3 years apart, and it's exhausting.
You know, I think what feels so scary is anything that you haven't been through, and this is in life, right? It's in relationships, it's with a romantic relationship or a friendship or work, anything that feels 2 or 3 steps ahead of where you're at feels daunting.
No, let me tell you specifically what feels daunting. Talking about sex feels daunting. Yeah. Talking about boyfriends or girlfriends or whatever feels daunting.
It does, because you haven't stepped through the 2 to 3 stages that you get to before you talk about it. So once you've gone through those couple of stages, they almost prepare you for that next level.
Did you have the sex conversation with?
Oh my God. Yeah. But the thing is like you
no.
don't want them to not be armed with the right information.
True.
Because the kids whose parents are most in denial of the fact that their children are beings in the world experiencing things are usually the most troubled, even with parents who have the best of intentions.
Oh my God, I'm afraid that's going to be me.
It can be you, but that also might be part of your lesson, right? That's what you choose.
I'm afraid.
Sure. Or you can just say, like, it's going to happen, and you want your kids to be, you want them to thrive, and you want them to be good, and you don't want them to put themselves in situations where they make what they could feel like permanent mistakes.
Is that just like a after dinner conversation, or is that like a go out for ice cream conversation?
It's like an all day.
Just like continuous.
It's a continuous thing. It's like
not a one-time thing.
Hey, no, it's an ongoing, because they're not ready for like a 17-year-old conversation about sex when they're 11, right? When their friend is showing them porn on their phone at school, right?
Cringing.
And they're like, so embarrassed, and they don't know what they watched, but they know it was bad. And you're like, you have to explain how kids have different rules than you, and that, the reason why there are standards around what kids can be exposed to or not is because you can't erase that out of their minds.
You can't erase it. It's
like,
scarred forever.
It's there, that's always there, and then it's like shit. So I'm real with my kids about it. I'm like, don't look up stuff that you will never be able to not know.
I know that about you.
And I'm like, that's terrible news.
Yes,
that is
terrible.
A nightmare that you didn't even know that you never needed to have.
Do you feel like open communication with your kids has been your kind of like way for them to always come to you and be comfortable talking to you?
Yeah, and also like I say to them, what do you think your punishment should be?
You do.
What would you do if you were me? Then it's not, I hate you. It's more of like, I get it. Because now I have to think about, if I was in your shoes, how I might feel about this.
Think outside of themselves.
Yeah.
Which is hard for many people, let alone kids.
And empathy.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like forcing that in those moments, but it's uncomfortable. Of course it's uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable talking about it with anybody. I get shy about certain things, but if you don't talk about it and you deny it, I think it's worse.
I do too. I mean, I really do. I kid that I'm actually very nervous about it, which I am. That's not actually, I'm not joking about that part.
No,
it terrifies me.
There's nothing cool about it. I mean, it sucks.
There's nothing
You're just
cool
like,
about
why are we doing this? I want you to be, because you also have an attachment to them as being these little tiny babies.
Did your mom have a sex talk with you?
Nope.
Yeah, I never got a sex talk. Yeah.
Nope.
I never got a sex talk. I got to like high school and it was like, I don't know, it was very I don't know. My mom would come to me and she'd be like, girl, just make sure you test it out before you marry. I'm like, what?
By the way, I wish my mom said that.
Mom, no, we're not doing this.
Mine
You're
was
not
all about
allowed.
hell and damnation, and you're going to hell, and you have to marry the first person. And I'm like, you guys don't even go to church.
I don't know.
What
For
are you
some
talking
reason, I
about?
almost rather the hell and damnation than the other. I was like, yo, Mom, we're cool, but we ain't that cool. Like, stop. Sometimes I felt like, you know, I've always had a really close relationship with my mom, but I will say that she was very like, she was very open, but we never had.
She didn't want you to be miserable.
That conversation. I think she had learned a lot. She had learned a lot from being a single mom and, you know, where that took her. And so, yeah, she was very open.
Good for her.
Good for her. But I was like, damn, Mom, this is too much for me. I can't handle this right now.
It is an uncomfortable conversation to have, but I think if she maybe started earlier with you, it wouldn't have been so awkward than her rolling up when you're like literally at the age of when you're starting to like
14,
get down.
15. I was like, girl, Ma, we are not doing this.
Yeah, you need to do it. Start when you're like 9 and 10 and talk about what's appropriate and not appropriate.
Right. And I went to Catholic high school, so that's where I was taught, you know, sex ed. So
abstinence.
So I was like, this is interesting.
It's for the male's pleasure only.
Like this is different. All right, cool. I mean, I think that, you know, you're fascinating. I think that
You do?
Yes, I really do.
What?
I do. I think that you're fascinating.
You do?
Yeah. I'm only friends with fascinating people though.
What?
But
Oh God. I love how you bring it back around to you. Of course you do.
thank you for having this conversation with us. Thank you for being open and
Us?
honest. Yeah, me and the audience.
Oh.
You don't see them out there?
Oh.
Do you hear them? They're there. They're just really quiet.
You could say me.
For me.
We talk all day.
We talk all day. And, you know, the great thing about Jess and I is we actually have these conversations all the time.
It's true.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Jessica, for
Thank you,
coming.
Lizzy.
I love you to the moon and back. And like I said, I think that you're a very aspirational person. You're inspiring.
Really?
Yeah, I do. And
Wow,
I think
you
you're,
don't tell me
you know
this
what you're
enough.
inspiring for?
Only
not just moms though.
You only choose
Not just moms.
to be
You are
friends with
inspiring.
people that are inspiring.
I do. I will. You know what it is? And I think that you're the same way. I like to surround myself with people who are going to inspire me, obviously love me, but who are going to push me in many different ways and going to push my boundaries and, you know, help expand the way I think and the way I operate. And I think that, you know, you're definitely one of those people that have done that.
Oh, I
Don't
love
get all
you.
sentimental. I can't do that.
You always get sentimental.
I know I can't do it. I don't want to. I don't want to. All right. Thank you.
All
I love
right.
you.
Love you.
Holla. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining our Cool Mom Code podcast, listening along. Make sure to come back, listen some more. We have some dope moms talking all the things, and we can't wait for you to hear more. Peace.